Can you kind of explain where we're at, though, with RPOs and why they are being talked about so much now? Is it just because of the Eagles, or is this really a trend that's changing in the league?
I think it's a trend, but it's, like you said, it's been around for a long time. It's been around in college football for a long, long time when Chip Kelly was there. And, I'm sure different teams ran it before Chip Kelly. It became a big staple of a bunch of high school offenses just because they're very simple to read. I think, a reason why they're gaining so much popularity is because it's so easy to understand. And that's one of the reasons why it's so effective at the same time. All you're doing is isolating a defender. You're not blocking him. And you're reading him. If he plays a run, you throw the ball. If he drops back, then you hand off the ball and you have a numbers advantage. So a lot of people can understand that concept, and which means that a lot of people are going to write about it and a lot of people want to read about it. And obviously with the Eagles being so successful using RPOs as, a good chunk of their offense, it's going to keep gaining popularity. But a pet peeve of mine is if you keep announcers that keep getting RPOs and play actions mixed together. They're not the same thing. They're two different things.
So, going back to the Eagles and the NFC Championship game, that is where Minnesota Vikings fans became super familiar with the RPO as the Eagles lit them up for 38 points. What did the Eagles do with them that made them so successful against a great defense, the defense that ranked number 1 in the NFL in yards and in points? What was it that they executed so well about those RPOs that had the Vikings defense thrown off completely?
Well, a common answer to defending RPOs is playing straight man coverage, bump and run, because then you don't have a conflict defender. You don't have a guy playing zone that has to play like the A gap and then drop into an inside wall zone. If you just play man coverage, every receiver is accounted for. You're disrupting the routes, and it's usually a good answer. But Doug Peterson, is a very creative coach, and he came up with a bunch of man-beating RPOs where he's combining pick plays with the run-pass option, and that was extremely effective for the Eagles, and they got a bunch of big plays out of that. And when you play man coverage, and when you have to play a lot of man coverage, you leave yourself open to deep passes. And as you remember, the Eagles were able to take advantage with a bunch of deep passes.
Yep, and they have the best offensive line in the league, so Nick Foles had plenty of time to have his wide receivers get open. I remember one specifically, one of the pick plays where Mac Hollins kind of sticks his back end out to kind of impede the progress of Harrison Smith. I remember going back and looking through that game at the different ways that the Eagles schemed the Vikings, and there was a lot of creativity there. And I think this year we're going to see a lot of people steal that same stuff. But, Mike Zimmer is 62 years old and in the NFL is a successful head coach because he has adapted from every era to what offenses were doing to beat defenses. So now you mentioned, okay, if they play straight up man, then they're going to get beat by some of the things that Doug Peterson did. Where do you think the adjustment is? And let me tell you what I would be thinking as a coach is, all right, if you want to run the football to win, go ahead. Run all day. I'm going to stop all those passing plays instead because just running is a less efficient play. And I know that nobody wants to have the ball run down their throat, but if you're getting 5 yards a run, that's still way worse than getting 8 yards a pass.
Yeah, and it's difficult because if you're getting the ball ran on you every play and you're getting an offense is getting 2nd and 5 or 2nd and 4, that just opens up the entire playbook for them. And obviously you want to stop the pass, but at the same time you don't want to make the run game efficient.
Right.
It's fine if they get like a big chunk, but if you're stopping them for 1 or 2 yards and then they might get a 5-yard play or something, that's okay. But it's about efficiency. If you could stop the run game from being efficient and get them into some 2nd and 9 situations and that kind of thing, then you're better off than what you said, just giving up big pass plays.
So what is the answer for a team like the Vikings that has so much talent? I mean, so far in training camp, we've seen them have Anthony Barr work in 5-man fronts sometimes. I don't know if that's an answer because no one's really going to come over to the sideline and say, hey, this is what we're working on to stop RPOs. But as far as trying to pressure the quarterback, right? Like, that's one of the major advantages of the RPO is usually it's a really quick pass and you don't get time to get pressure on the quarterback. I guess I'm just really thinking about all the different ways that Mike Zimmer could potentially scheme up to try to stop these teams who are going to try to run things that the Eagles did against them last year in that game.
Yeah, so with RPOs, there's two different type of reads. There's a pre-snap read and a post-snap read. For pre-snap reads, the quarterback is counting how many guys are in the box. If there are too many guys in the box, then he might throw a bubble screen and he'll make that decision before the ball is snapped. And with those kind of reads, you can mess them up by lining up in, a soft box to begin with, and then bringing the guy in extremely late into the box. So that way you have a numbers advantage and the quarterback already made his decision. So you could do that kind of stuff, playing around pre-snap movement on the defensive front and secondary. And as far as the post-snap read, when you're reading, when a quarterback's making post-snap reads, almost always the will linebacker. So he's reading the will linebacker's movement. If the will linebacker is moving towards a run, then he'll throw a slant or a seam behind him. And if he drops back, then he'll just, the quarterback would hand the ball off and the offense would have a numbers advantage. So things you could do with that is you could blitz the will linebacker and have a defensive end drop back and take his place instead, and force the quarterback to make a pass read, but then drop somebody into his place. Right. So there's a bunch of little things that college defensive coordinators have tinkered around with that Zimmer could probably study, or he probably has a bunch of contacts with college coaches that have dealt with RPOs and study what they're doing and kind of incorporate them into his defense.
Yeah, that's a thing that I know for sure because he's talked about it, that Zimmer does every year, is goes around and meets with a bunch of different coaches and gets their advice. I mean, last year in the off season, he had gone through some things with the locker room and went around and met with a bunch of different head coaches that had experience and listened to them talk about, what they learned over their first couple of years. And that might be a thing that he does. And again, one of the reasons that he's one of the best coaches in the NFL is because he never is complacent. He never stops trying to solve the problems that offenses present. But that, and excuse me if I use the wrong term here, but the idea of like a robber is really interesting to me, of making it appear as if one guy is going to be in an area and then have someone else slide into that spot. Because what I see working all the time is the combination of a slant and a flat, and then the quarterback could just decide, or a bubble screen. But I feel like there would be a way to bait them in to trying to throw that slant and have somebody kind of step into that spot if you can anticipate it. But then, Ted, you're spending a lot of time on focusing on baiting them into one specific play, which kind of opens up a lot of other things if a team is executing those RPOs, right?
Yeah, but that's a cat and mouse game you got to play. You take away one thing, you're going to open up another thing, but hopefully you call your bait at the right time, and they don't call their counter to your bait at the right time. And that's just a general, strategy chess match that you have to deal with in the NFL.
So going to the other side of the ball with the Vikings, you wrote a piece a while back about Kirk Cousins and some of the things he does well. Now the offensive line is dinged up. So Nick Easton is out for the season, and they're kind of scrambling here. Is it going to be one of the other guys on the team already? Are they going to go to the free agent market? Are they going to try to make a trade at some point? If an offensive line is dinged up, Ted, and you have good weapons everywhere, are RPOs a thing that we could see the Vikings use a lot because of that? Or do you think that they're also demanding on an offensive line? Because Philly was so good up front, they could execute them.
No, they're definitely, it could definitely help out offensive line, because in the run game, if you execute it right, you are creating a softer box for your offensive line to run block in, so just less people to block, and that helps them out, obviously. And you're not pass blocking, so when you're run blocking, defensive linemen aren't flying upfield and rushing at your quarterback. They have to play their gaps, and that helps out a little bit because helps with the pass blocking, because they're staying at the line of scrimmage, and the quarterback just has to make a quick decision. They don't have all the time in the world, but they'll at least have that first second or two to make their read and get rid of the ball. Rarely in RPOs you see a quarterback get charged at, unless it's a RPO that involves a longer route, which I don't like as a strategy, and we don't see that much at the pro level.